Hey guys, this is the What Happened to Kathy Shea series. This is episode 6. And on this episode, I will talk to a woman that had a possible encounter with a man in a sketch. So, let's hear her story, guys. So, without further ado, let's hear what she has to say. Let's get into it.
You were at the library.
Yes, but you could go to either place.
Okay.
And how I missed my ride and had to walk down was, I was at the library. I was supposed to have a ride down with somebody. I was at the swimming pool when I was to be at the library, or vice versa.
I can't even keep track of where you're supposed to be here.
And I missed the ride.
Yeah, you missed the ride.
Nevertheless, I missed the ride. So I thought, well, I had walked down to my grandmother's, who lived on 15th Street.
Now, do you remember the time?
9 o'clock. The library and the pool both closed at 9 o'clock.
Because your ride was supposed to be there at 9?
Yes, I was supposed to get my ride at 9. I mean, they close everything down and you have to leave, you know.
And who was the ride from?
I can't remember. One of my friend's parents, probably. And, you know, I came back to the library where I was supposed to be, and they were gone. And the library was closed. And it was like, I just thought, well, I'm going to walk down to Grandma's, because that's where they were going to drop me off anyway. So I started to walk, and I noticed this car was circling me. And when I got down to where that curve on Clay Avenue is, right around 14th Street and Clay, this man stopped just before that curve started. And he stopped and he said, "Do you want to ride?" And I said, "No, thank you. I'm only going down here to my grandmother's." And he said, "Okay." And he left, but he kept circling me. He kept going around. And after I got on down, not quite to 14th Street, like where the alley is between 13th and 14th, he stopped again. And he said, "Are you sure you don't want to ride?" And at that point, I was a little adamant, and I said, "No, thank you." And he left again, but came around the block again. And when I don't think he came around the block again after that. Just when I got down to where the bridge is, between 14th and 15th, he was sitting in the alley, just sitting there. And when I got to the edge of he was on the one side of the bridge in the alley, and when I got to the other side, I didn't want to go any farther because he was sitting there. And I stopped, and I just stood there, and he didn't pull out, and I wouldn't walk any farther. And I was thinking, I knew that Corrigan's lived on the corner of 14th Street. He was the football coach at the time, and his son was in my class at school. And I thought, should I try to run through the yard and get to Corrigan's porch and knock on their door? And I was looking, and there were no other buildings in there at the time. Now I believe there's a house, maybe a little shed or something. And I thought, oh, that's a pretty good distance. He could he could get out of his car and run and catch me. And all these things were going through my mind, and he just kept sitting there. And finally, after I'd say 3 to 5 minutes, he pulled out. He finally pulled out and went. So I started to walk again. I crossed the bridge and got to the alley, and or almost to the alley, and I saw him making a U-turn on 15th Street and Clay Avenue to turn around and come back again.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, I ran down the alley, and I think we figured it was the second house down where Turnballs used to live at the time. I got to their yard, and I shot through their yard and across 15th Street to my grandmother's house. That was, what did we say, probably about the fourth or fifth house down.
Oh.
And I ran in the door, and my aunt was in there, and she said, "What's wrong with you? You look like you saw a ghost." I guess all the color was out of my face, and I was scared to death, and I told her what happened. Now, the reason that I know the timeline was near Kathy Shea is because my Aunt Judy that I'm talking about, she got married in May of 1965, And the day in March that Kathy Shea was taken, we were going to be fitted for her wedding dresses. So that was the year that she left home, but she was still at home when this happened. But I know that I would not have been up at the high school because I was in 8th grade, and I'm sure it took me a while into 7th grade to get familiar with all these things that, you know, a young teenage girl could go do. And
Right.
so I'm sure it was the end of 7th grade or sometime into 8th grade, the spring, maybe the fall of 7th or 8th. Oh no, wait a minute. I may have, maybe like I started knowing to do this in the spring of 7th grade, so maybe the fall of 8th grade the weather was warmer. So I know it wasn't real cold, so I know it wasn't dead of the winter. And that could have been in the fall when I was in 7th grade, or sometime in the spring when I was in 8th grade, which Kathy was taken in March when I was in 8th grade. So the timeline, I know the timeline is right because of when my aunt was still at her living at home before she got married. And so that's, you know, what happened to me.
That's what you remember.
Yeah, it was very scary, you know, as a young 14-year-old girl. And like I say, I don't know why I never told, well, I know why I didn't tell my parents, because I was afraid they wouldn't allow me to go out to the library and do the fun things that as a teenager I enjoyed doing. But Judy, my Aunt Judy has often said she doesn't understand why she didn't, you know, call the police either, but she was, you know, she was in the middle of planning a wedding, and so the story never got to the police after Kathy was taken.
Seems like there's a lot of people that should have called the police but didn't.
Yeah. Probably, again, like we were saying, those things that was such an unusual thing to think back in those days that,
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I would have, but
So
that's because I'm 73 now, and, you know, no better.
Now, were you worried about every time that you did go out that this guy
Yeah.
was going to appear?
Yes, there were times that I got stuck again and walked alone, and I was scared to death. You know, I tried to avoid having situations where I walked alone at night, even though, like I said, it was, you know, safer in those days. But anytime I had to walk alone at night after that, I was scared to death, and I got to where I had to be as fast as I could.
Yeah, I bet. They were pretty traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you remember about any slab or anything like that? I know a lot of locals are saying that she was put into a concrete slab.
Oh,
You don't remember hearing the stories
No,
about that?
no.
I don't know if that's
No,
spoken or if that's something that
I don't know, but boy, I'll tell you, I bet people,
real.
a lot of people could remember. I bet you'll find, you know, because
Yeah.
everybody remember. There was a little something that everybody heard, or you know,
Yeah.
something that's distantly related or something. I bet you'll find a lot of.
Yeah, the thing about that is you hear different stories and none of them.
Yeah,
seem
and
to-
you don't know if they're, but I tell you, that is gospel what I'm telling you that happened to me. That, you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
I have no idea if it was related, but that happened to me. Just, you know, and that's something that you don't forget, even though it's this many years later, you know.
Right, it's traumatizing for
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, I've told the story from
Mm-hmm.
here, that's what happened to me one time, and it was very scary. And like I say, the timeline could be right. I have no idea if it was the same man or not, but the timeline certainly could be. You know, might be something similar to mine. You know.
Yeah, I have my theory. I mean, do you have a theory on what you think happened? Like, do you think it was a local man, or do you just you never really thought about it? Or?
I thought about it, but I just can't imagine that it could be somebody local and nobody ever figured. I don't know. I don't, like I say, I don't have theories. I can't figure these things out. But
Yeah. And I know there was a case where a man killed a girl, Maurice Chivarella. She was killed a year to the day where Kathy was taken.
And where was that?
I have it written down somewhere.
Well, that's okay. You don't have to.
But it was
that's
like
interesting.
2 hours. I think it was Hazleton. You familiar with Hazleton, PA? I do believe that's where it took place at. But it was March 18th, 1964. I thought there was a correlation because it was the exact same day, a year to the day.
Year before Kathy Shea.
Yeah, 1 year
Yeah.
before.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe it was like one of those things where somebody wanted to repeat.
Yeah.
But there's no.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a local guy. He comes to different areas, and it's close enough that it could be
At the city,
you
right.
know, connected, but it's somebody from maybe somewhere in the middle.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That could have driven down.
Mm-hmm.
But that case has just been closed. They finally.
Did they find the person that did it?
Well, he died in 1980, but they were able to do
Figure it out.
and figure out that this was who the person was, although he died
Yeah.
40 some years ago.
You know, it's hard to believe that somebody could do that, and they never have no idea. Nobody could ever figure any of it out.
Yeah, it's a mystery for sure.
I don't know how the cops back in those days, when you didn't have DNA, you didn't really have blood evidence. I don't know how they would ever be able to figure out if someone would come from Pittsburgh and come in here and take a kid, and how would anybody ever figure that out without DNA and stuff, like back in the 50s and 60s?
Right.
They wouldn't.
How would they ever be able, unless you had an eyewitness who said that guy right there, you know, how would they ever know that?
No, I don't know how you would, you know.
Yeah. I think that's why, like today, they're able to close cases like that because there was an actual physical body
Yeah.
that they could get DNA off of.
Yeah.
With Kathy, there was
They
no
never
evidence
found
left
her.
behind.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, everybody used to wonder if somebody took her in a raisin or somewhere else.
That was a rumor.
Yeah.
And I remember now that, since we're rehashing this, they had bloodhounds. And they traced that,
To a certain point and it stopped.
yep,
Yeah.
every
Like
time.
Mhm.
Yep, on the
Remember?
road, every time. It would stop there, would sniff and send her, followed her wherever it was, down the path or school. And it would always stop on the road.
Has
Same spot.
anybody ever told you that before?
I did do my homework and I did read that.
Yeah,
It's nice
they-
to hear it from
Yeah.
people that lived it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember they said, and it was right over there by corner where Panacitti's. I mean, she was almost there, according to what you know.
What do you mean, Panacitti's?
You know, Scott and Scott Panacetti. They lived on the corner.
Oh,
there.
in the alley there, the White House.
Yeah,
Okay. Was that where it was, huh?
that's
I didn't
where
know that.
You know, she got to 15th Street and got over to almost 16th, and that's where now don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's where they said the scent stopped. So you know.
Oh,
she
on the
was-
way to school.
Yeah, she was
Okay.
She was getting
Okay.
close to school when that scent stopped.
Yeah, in that alley, or that alley. I
They
guess.
should do something to mark that, like a plaque,
Like a memorial or something.
Yeah,
You know what I mean, to mark where last, where
yeah, where
this
that.
is the area. Of course, I mean, I guess the bloodhounds could be wrong, but you know what I mean. Like there should be something
Yeah.
that, in Kathy Shea's honor,
Yeah,
in remembrance of Kathy Shea at the spot where.
Yeah.
yeah, that's a
good
nice
idea.
idea, Max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that entrance isn't there anymore.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause I saw one picture of Adam's school, and it's just right in the front there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no pictures from any other angle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
she probably would have been going in. Well, I don't know. She may have had to go down and go in the front entrance of school,
Yeah.
but she may have gone in that bigger entrance on the side. But she wouldn't. I don't believe she would have gone up and gone in that where the 5th and 6th grade and the principal's office and the nurse's office.
Right.
That was what was in that hall. And
I Oh, another question. Do you know anything about the patrol boy that witnessed the stranger in the car that drove up and said, "Do you know who Kathy Shea is? Can you point her out to me?"
No, I don't.
Probably sixth grade. Well,
Yeah.
you would have been out of there by then. But
Yeah, I would have been in high school. And,
yeah, he was probably.
he's probably a
Well,
couple
2
years
years
younger than
behind
me.
you.
Yeah.
That's the first time I heard that story.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't hear that story?
Yeah, I don't know. That
But then I don't dig into that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm just crazy.
Well, that would kind of rule
Well,
out
you
the
know, there
uncle
was-
too.
Yeah,
The
I
uncle
never.
wouldn't have to ask who Kathy Shea was. You know what I mean? If that, you know. Yeah.
To me, it almost sounded like somebody was sent in here to get her
Yeah.
Yeah.
and bring her to them and for
Yeah.
money or
Mm-hmm.
you
Well-
know, whatever.
I understand that.
What was her dad? He worked at the mill or
I
something?
believe.
He worked at West Vaco,
Yeah.
foreman,
Yeah.
James Shea.
Okay, he was foreman there. Okay. Well, Grandpap
Yeah.
was the plant manager or something.
He was high. I can't remember
Where
exactly.
you don't remember? You don't. Yeah, because he would have been at the mill at the same time as her dad would have been. in
Yeah.
the
Oh
60s.
yeah. And like I said, they only lived a couple
Well,
doors down.
that's what made me think of it because they were so close to,
Yeah.
neighbors together there.
Yeah, and then Steve Hall, I think Steve Hall lived in the next town. Wonder if he would remember any details about,
Yeah, he probably. Well, who knows?
he was the name. And Bob Warner who lived across the street.
What got me
All
was
Gary's cronies lived, right there.
they put that over the radio.
Oh, they okay.
WTRN, power,
Power.
Do you know who Bob Alberts is by chance?
No,
Familiar with that name? No.
no, and they requested that you go out and look in all your garages,
Oh
in the
yeah,
sheds, under your anywhere that
yeah.
somebody could be
Like I
hiding.
say, when we were in the car driving up we were going for our final fittings on Judy's wedding dress, or Judy's, the gown. I was in my aunt's wedding, and this came over the radio, and everybody was to go look in sheds or garages, or they were trying to get everybody in town to go look out in the property and make sure the little girl didn't stop somewhere playing, or
Yeah, my dad had to go out and look in the garage.
yeah.
Or he did. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody that heard it did, it was a very big. I mean, they looked for everybody, and I can remember, they like a human chain, like up the pike, going
Oh,
looking
really?
in case and anybody missed it, somebody missed. They searched. They really searched and searched.
Yeah. That's what I read. It was one of the highest
Oh,
as far as a mass amount of people.
yeah,
They said
yeah,
it was one of the biggest at the time.
yeah. Everybody in town,
Yeah.
Well, it's a small town. Tyrone was actually then, in the 60s, there was
Yeah,
probably
well, we were-
15,000 people
I was
there.
gonna say we were pretty
Wow.
close.
Yeah, it was bigger then than it is now, population-wise. And they had 2 movie theaters.
Yeah. Did you
Oh,
know
really?
that?
Back then you had 2 movie theaters?
Yeah,
Like outdoor or are they indoor?
No, they were
They were
indoor.
inside.
down where
The
Burger
Wilson
King
and the El
was.
Patio. You never heard that before?
I
No.
never
There's
knew
2
that you
movie
guys had
theaters.
movie theaters.
Unbelievable. The
Tons
way
of
Tyrone
bars.
was. You can't believe the difference in Tyrone from the time when we were kids. And how many grocery stores did we have? We had the MP, we had Foodland, we had, it wasn't Philo at the time. What was that originally?
Riverside.
Riverside.
And they were fair
and the
size.
Acme.
Yeah, they had 4 or 5.
All these,
Wow.
we had grocery stores, and downtown there were stores in all the buildings, and there were a lot more buildings than there are now.
Well, Tyrone was the hub of the highway.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they
Oh,
advertised.
really?
My grandma, her mom always, that's what she said.
The hub of the highway.
Well, they did that because all the highways that Altoona down over the mountain that way. But then old 99 took
Yeah.
all that away. easier to go to Altoona. You know what I mean?
Big
They lost a
college,
lot of
yeah.
business with that super highway.
Yeah.
And at
They
the
were good
time,
days out. It was.
only people had one car. Cars weren't near as good as they are today. You know what I mean? They just were limited to one per household.
Yeah.
And
And like
they
I
I
said,
do
go
remember
far.
going to Altoona was a big deal. That was
Yep.
something you did on the weekends. And that's just when I was a kid in the 80s,
Yeah.
70s, and early 80s. Going to Altoona was a big deal. Heck, now I go 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
You know, but back then that was like, hey,
I
load off the
remember-
car, guys. We're going to Altoona.
Yeah.
We're going to the
Well, you know-
Kmart. You know,
Yeah.
that was another thing as teenagers. We got on the bus and would ride to Altoona.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Patty. I remember Patty, and and this is when we were younger teenagers. We went up and we would go to McCrory's, and remember we got those little Ralphie tie clips. And,
Yeah.
And you'd go to Gables, and they had a little place in there, a little a restaurant, but it was just a little place where you could get a sandwich and a milkshake, and we'd go up there and shop and get on the bus and come back home.
Mm-hmm.
Now that was, like I said, that didn't last. We didn't do that long. I don't know. I guess we got driver's licenses. And, but I
One
do
time they
remember
had,
a couple times we would go up and down on the bus just for something to do on Saturday afternoon.
at one time they had trolleys that ran,
Yeah, well, that you
That
go
was
back
before
me
you.
there. Yeah,
and she's old.
but I do remember. Yeah. Hey, Tyrone, they had 3 men's shops or 3 or 4 men's shops, the Squire shop and Schulman's and Gardner's and what was, I want to say Feynman's, but that was the women's, Lester's.
Yeah,
4
Lester.
men's shops.
Wow.
There was the wing shop, the boutique, Feynman's.
Because they didn't drive in those days, stayed home, no cars, transportation,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the train would stop up there.
You could get everything you needed downtown.
Yeah, and the train, they had trains all the time, would stop there and let people off for whatever reason, and that's,
And his
They
daddy
have-
had the jewelry store.
And there was
store.
3 of
And I was
those.
going to say, weren't there
Yep.
other jewelry store?
Yeah,
I mean,
3 jewelry
it's
shops.
It's amazing how things have changed.
Everybody
in our
had a watch that
lifetime.
needed fixed.
Mm-hmm. So Tyrone was the hub. That's what attracted people to come.
I guess. Well, the villa. Did you ever hear of the villa?
Yeah, I do remember the villa when I was a kid.
The villa was a big draw too.
Yeah.
People.
Had good food, Italian food.
Yeah, they
Had lobsters in a tank.
Yeah, you go in and pick your
Yeah, they had
lobster.
live lobsters. I remember that when I was.
Oh, I've never been in there, but
I can remember they had live lobsters.
Well, my dad, Greer School,
yeah, the girls' school. Yeah.
okay, Betty Davis had a daughter go there, and David Jansen. Now, that's just 2 that I know of.
Yeah.
And
Betty
they-
Davis.
And then those people would come and eat at the villa.
Mm.
So you're saying Betty Davis ate at the villa? Betty Davis sat in the same booth that I did and had spaghetti.
Well,
Oh, yeah. I bet you
Never realized. Never put 2 and 2
I'm not
together.
sure.
Put that on your,
She may- she
your
may have
resume.
eaten
What
it
am I?
on that-
Yeah.
One of my comments.
Technically, your asses have rubbed.
Now,
Yeah.
she probably ate on that fancier side where the
Oh
lobster.
yeah, I wasn't allowed over there.
I was
We
just
like,
in-
we like the little.
I had to eat on the poor man's side. I could
The bar.
They had the old swing bar, like bar doors. I
Yeah.
can remember just getting glimpses of that side.
Well,
That's
wonder if
the-
her grandmother was
My
a
grandmother
hostess.
was the hostess.
Did she
Oh,
ever-
really?
When you came in, she would seat you, and
Yeah. Well,
And my
Grandma
dad
Roth
meant
was a lovely,
David
beautiful
Jansen.
woman, and
I don't know who David Jansen is.
The fugitive, the original fugitive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he came in my dad's store at a jewelry shop down there, probably to buy something, for the daughter, whatever.
yeah.
And he says, he goes, "You watch TV?" Dad goes, "Nope." My dad, no, I don't have time for that.
well, that was my mother's favorite.
Yeah.
Like,
She did like Fugitive. I remember that.
yeah, she liked him, and Dad used to get about half. He would come home from the post office for lunch at lunchtime, and Mom was busy watching David Jansen and didn't have any lunch there for him. He said, well, if you weren't, I'm always watching that fugitive. Well, she liked him, and she thought he was nice looking. Oh, the good old days.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can figure out what happened to him. That's Cassie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would surely be nice,
Maybe not the person, but maybe rule out
Yeah.
a lot
yeah,
of people and kind of narrow it down to
Yeah.
a stranger.
It's always
Out of towner
nice
coming
to
in,
get
just
the
coming in town
information.
to,
Trying to
Yeah.
pick somebody up.
yeah,
It seems like that's where it's pointing to.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask a question. Back to that patrol boy. Is that a rumor that someone said that, or did you hear that from a reliable
Yeah, it was
source?
in the newspapers.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
I
think I
was
heard
going to
that
say
before,
that
too.
too.
Yeah.
Oh,
'Cause I
on
did-
some of the anniversaries, they've had
Yeah.
big articles in the newspapers that
Yeah, I think I've heard that too, but I agree. I don't think they mentioned his name.
Nah, probably because he's a
He was a kid,
minor.
he was-
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you could track him down.
Well, it'd be hard to do that. Well,
He was in
never-
eighth. He
you
was
never
in
know
sixth
somebody-
grade in Adams School. They're the patrol boys or
yeah, he
whatever
was in
grade.
sixth grade.
Fifth, sixth grade.
Get Sue Rhodes' yearbook and go through
Yeah.
and look and see. You might have to call a few different people to see.
Well, I would have a yearbook.
Not from out of school. Wouldn't that
Well, no, I don't. Well, of course, maybe after I left, they got them, but somewhere they would
Oh, yeah.
probably have a record of who the patrol boys were.
I'm
Yeah.
sure the cops
In those
had
days.
that.
Yeah, I'm sure the cops.
You remember Susan avoided one of the patrol boys that day. Remember?
Yeah,
That's why she didn't walk with Kathy. I'm wondering if it's the same patrol boy.
I don't
And when
know.
I go see, I don't know. You said you know Susan, right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna try to contact her and see if she wants to.
Okay.
Sit down with me. It's kind of like what we're doing.
Okay.
I haven't reached out to her yet.
I don't know. I'm thinking about going to the cross stitch store, but then, like we say, everything's so crazy.
I'm not
sure-
going to
I'm sure
Cleveland
Winnie
and not
would guilt me
thinking
into
cross
staying
country
the one
because I
week,
want to
but-
go see that store.
I hope to hell if I live to be 73, I'm not as busy as you are.
Well, I said
I
said
got
that-
so much.
I don't know who I was
Did you
talking
see my
to.
tractor? I got that tore
I
apart.
ain't gonna have to worry about
I got the
that.
blade sharpened, put that back, patched the crack in it.
Guess
Well-
what? Guess what? While I was sitting in that chair taking a nap after work today,
Yeah.
my grass got cut.
Well, I said
townhouse, they cut the grass.
I tell you what, that's
I
the way to
told-
go. You're right.
Yeah.
I tell you,
Take a nap
I
with
told
that
that'll
grass.
give you
Nancy,
time to
I
do
said, I
baseball
thought
games
when I
all
got to this
summer if
age,
you want to.
I'd be able to just sit here. This is my cross stitching. I like
$50
to
bucks a
cross
game,
stitch and
Max.
quilt. I said I thought
$50.
I'd just be sitting doing the things I've waited all my life to. No, it's crazier. You have 4 kids and then you get 10 grandchildren, and life's crazier than it was when I was just trying to raise my babies. And I don't understand it either, but what can I say, Max? It's but I
God
am. You know
forbid
what?
to tell
I'm gonna, I
Megan's kids
can't.
no.
Here's-
Her favorite lives in Cleveland, I'll tell you.
No.
Oh, really?
I-
Uh-oh.
No, that's not true. My last one that has any little kids, and I'm very fond of little
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sister that lives in Cleveland is 12 years younger than me. So
Yeah,
her
we
kids
had
are
9 years later.
6
We had a
and 4,
surprise
so they're
baby.
still little.
Yeah.
So they're still little.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've always liked little kids, and so whichever kid has a little kid, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
And
she
his
like-
are-
Well, yeah, she's
and-
honest.
Yeah.
His
Mine are
youngest is
teenagers and grown.
Yeah.
Hey, I like yours
his
best when
youngest
they're in
is
3,
13,
4, and
and
5.
she could care less about me anymore.
Yeah.
I couldn't even talk to
Yeah,
her
look
anymore
at
for
that
ice
age.
cream.
Olivia.
We were up there. We went up, took the rug scrubber up for Max the day before yesterday, I guess it was, and she was up so in the room on her phone, and I said, "Oh, why don't you go with me and Papa? We'll run down to the Meadows and get ice cream." And But now go back 3 or 4 years, and every time they walked in the door, it was Lily. Can I stay overnight? Lily, can I stay overnight? And she was here all the time. Now she's a teenager, and we're
She
nothing.
wants to go to the library and
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
chuck
that,
out the
yeah.
boys.
Don't
Yeah.
go to the library.
Yeah,
Do
well,
not
that's
walk on the
my.
lawn.
She's in 7th grade, going into 8th grade, so
Yeah.
she'd be about the age you were.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how scary that would be for her?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Now, these kids are tougher than we were, I think. I don't know.
They act tougher, but I think
Well,
if push
like
comes to
Judy
shove,
said, it took the color right out of
if
me.
something real like that happened to them, I think they,
Yeah.
Well, nowadays they have cell phones and they can just.
Well, yeah, they
Yeah,
call right away.
yeah.
Dad, somebody's following me, or
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
picked that cell phone up when he stopped and said, if you don't get out of here, I'm calling the police.
Take pictures of them.
Mhm.
And say, I got pictures of you. You know, it's Google's already on the cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You better get out of here. Exactly who it is. You know,
Yeah, I guess you couldn't pick up anybody now.
you
Well,
could,
you could, but
yeah,
not like that, not
You
pulling
had to be a
up.
little
yeah, not
trickier.
pulling up.
Yeah.
Somebody just snap a picture
14-year-old little kids without that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, my theory or thought, that's not really a theory, but if he started like in the spring or the fall with you, and then he was on Pennsylvania Park Avenue with somebody who was a little bit older, it sounds like he was maybe trying to get someone, but the older kids weren't falling for his lines. Like
Yeah.
they knew better. So
Yeah,
that's
you did
why he
mention
went
that.
so,
Yeah.
that's why it ended up being like kindergarten. Because they were, you know what I mean? Like they couldn't fight back. He could scoop her up. But it
Yeah.
sounds like he might have, if it's the same guy, and if it's, you know, if there is a connection between that, he might have, you know, when he started out with someone older and thought, I don't know if I could wrestle this kid away long enough to no one would hear. They're not just voluntarily getting in or coming close enough because they know better because they're older. So, you know what I mean? It seemed like they
Yeah.
got younger until the kindergartner just didn't know any better. And
It's funny how you mentioned that because how close she was to the school.
yeah,
He was probably like, hey, would you, I mean, I'm just saying, like, if that, like you,
Yeah.
if he
And
did
you know,
circle her,
yeah.
he
And-
ran
He might
out
have
of
been at
time.
the school waiting for
With
somebody
her-
to be alone, just like
With
He
her-
might have just grabbed her right there because
And
Because of
did
the
they
space.
say she was late that day?
I didn't
Did I-
read
No.
that
Oh, you
What-
didn't? Okay.
because
she had been sick.
Yeah. What was the
She
deal
had been
with that?
sick. Her dad came
Oh
home.
yes, and he.
I remember-
it wasn't unusual. That's why the
Yes.
teacher didn't question whether she was there.
Yeah,
or
because
not.
she had been sick and she had been missing time. So
Right.
when she didn't show up for the afternoon kindergarten, she just assumed she was sick again and
yeah,
was staying home. It wasn't until after school when the mom or whoever, I think it was the mom, called over to the school and said, "Where's Kathy?" She never came home from school. That they realized she never even made it to school. So
You know,
he had
and
3-hour head start, 4 hours maybe,
and that
before
just
anybody
goes
even
to show
realized that he
you.
was missing.
That just goes to
Yeah.
show you
I
how
think it-
different things were.
yeah.
Yeah.
You would not let a kindergarten child walk that far to school alone today.
Well, they had crossing guards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, they did.
if
but-
I remember,
Oh, I'm not faulting the people at that time, but you
No.
weren't let a 5-year-old kid walk to
Well,
high
that was
school.
normal.
well, but what I'm saying is they walked down to the block, and she walked at every corner. A crossing guard, 6th grade or older, could see her, except for that one little section there where she went missing. There was like a half of an alley
Yeah.
or half of a block or something
Oh, yeah.
where she was not within the sight of her parents or a crossing guard. And usually her cousin came and walked her that
Susan.
route.
A fresh girl, or firm.
Yeah.
But you know
Super
what?
earned,
But you
yeah.
know what, Matt?
But for some reason she
But
didn't
still,
come that
when
day.
he's going to kindergarten in
No.
the fall, would
No.
anybody ever let some? That just wouldn't happen
Oh,
today.
Yeah. No, you're
I
right.
wouldn't.
No.
But you know, if I was
Hell, I can't go pick them up unless we have IDs and the car has a
yeah.
Yeah.
number on it that they
Well,
know.
you're technically not allowed to pick up Olivia either, but you have.
I had to
Are
go
we,
in.
are we not? Are we
Oh,
not
really?
on
You
the
had to
list?
go
I went in that
I
one
think
time.
actually, you know what? I think you two are on the list now.
Yeah, I
think
went
we
in
did.
to see where Olivia was at. They
Yeah.
questioned who I was.
Yeah.
I
But
said,
yeah, you're right. There's no even Kit. I don't think
Yeah.
they'd let Kit, who's
Oh, they
six-
won't.
No, you
Is he in
haven't.
first or second grade?
She's just finishing up second.
Finishing up second. Yeah, even someone that age, nowadays you would never let her walk.
when
across
we
the
went
gym.
to pick, who'd we pick up? Kid or Winnie, don't matter. We had to have a sticker hanging on the mirror with the number 125 or whatever
Yeah.
it was
Remember, yeah.
to identify us because we were on the list, but they wanted to know the number. They had to see that
Yeah.
tag.
Hey, you know what they did at school, Olivia's school today? Kids took in guns, water guns, squirt guns,
Oh.
and squirted the teachers.
Oh, really?
And I thought if that was a public school, they would be, you know what I mean? Like
They
there's
wouldn't allow the
been,
guns.
yeah, I think they were super soakers, so they weren't like, you know, but still, like I thought, man, if that was in a public school, they've had kid situations where kids have brought in
They're probably giving them
squirt
tests.
guns and
Yeah.
They're probably
squirt
giving
guns,
them
and they
tests.
call the authorities and want them expelled for bringing a gun to school.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, because you could put anything in a squirt gun too.
well, yeah, true. That's true.
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
acid or
yeah,
gasoline, set them on, you know.
yeah, that's true.
One
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
people were not right.
yeah, yeah. Public
Crazy.
school, maybe they. Yeah, you're right. Somebody, of course, I mean they could do it private too, but
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
public school's going to think, well, we're a threat. You could be putting
Yeah.
one match and gasoline in there. Yeah, but I've heard. Well, I don't know if it would. I've heard instances where kids have brought in toy guns in like that. You know, if they were squirt guns or cat guns, and they kick them out of school.
Yeah.
I saw one where a kid brought a toenail clipper or fingernail clipper, and
Oh,
they threw him out for that.
Yeah.
maybe it was probably a little knife, isn't there?
Yeah, just a little tiny.
file in there, yeah.
Yeah, file. Yeah.
I have a knife with me. I don't have it now. I
Well,
couldn't
yeah,
change my
you-
shorts, but I always had a pocket knife. I carried them on ships. And
Yeah.
got
They should
shot.
let you back in the country.
No, they should. They should.
I was in
put you in
Mexico.
jail. He just kept pushing it.
Yeah.
It's just a habit you have that you carry that.
Oh no.
Okay, guys, this concludes the interview with the woman. Now, that was quite a story that she told. It's very interesting. It gives insights to what may have happened to Kathy Shea. Now, this whole incident took place only a few blocks from Kathy's home, as well as the route that she walked throughout of school. So, was this the man that's responsible for the disappearance of Kathy Shea? I guess we may never know, but we can form our own opinions about what we think happened and use response. So, without further ado, this concludes this episode. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you in our next episode.